Hello everybody, welcome back to Wild River Aviation. This episode of Wild River Aviation, we're going to cover my experience with the Baker School. And the reason I'm doing this video, I'm not getting paid by Bakers. I'm not getting paid to wear their hat. I'm not getting paid to promote them at all. In fact, later this year, I'm going to give them more money because I'm going to go back and get my IA later in 2021. My experience with mechanics and anything that had a motor to it kind of started when I was a young kid. And of course, there's a B. Why is there a B? You were not invited. I don't have honey. I don't even pollinate, man. Dude, I'm not. There's no water. I swear to God. Bees. Where was I at? My understanding of anything mechanical started with my grandfather. He wanted me to learn how to work on cars before he'd let me get a driver's license. And to help with that, he bought me a Triumph TR7. And I didn't even have the added benefit of having it running when it got to the house. It was towed to the house. Battery was dead. Everything was leaking. It was a complete mess. It was just a complete mess. Now, if you never heard of a Triumph TR7, here's me after I got the thing running. Very proud of it. The Triumph TR7, it was made by a company called British Leyland, if you've never heard of them. Back in the 60s and 70s, they were very popular. They made MGs, Triumph Spitfires, little tiny British cars. They also made Jaguars there for a time. Very, very fun to drive cars that required a ton of maintenance. So I had a conundrum. To pay for all the parts that this thing was going to need, and it needed everything, I had to go get a job. So I went and got a job at the local airport, just thinking I'd just be pumping gas or whatever. But the IA there, the FBO there, hired me to be also an assistant mechanic. So after school, I'd go to the airport, do annuals, do oil changes, help in any way I could, take a lot of panels off of airplanes, and mow the lawn. I mean, I did everything. I was the go-to kid. I also learned how to fly airplanes there. And ironically, I learned how to fly before I could learn how to drive because it took me so long to get the TR7 up and running. So fast forward a bunch of years. You know, I bounced around from all sorts of aviation jobs. And if you're familiar with aviation back in the 80s and 90s, you'll understand that there was a lot of aviation jobs that got bounced around. From airlines buying and selling their assets to closing down to being merged to being acquired, and the golden age of aviation dying, where everybody in their family had somebody that owned a Cessna or a Piper and could take you flying for the weekend if you really wanted to. Those days had ended, and I got off into other things, other careers. 2 Bs. Is there a nest or something? But I slowly wormed my way back in aviation with electric aviation, which is a whole other story. And so I had the time, and I had the money. So finally decided I've got the money, I've got the time, I'm going to get off my butt, and I'm going to go get my A&P certification. And it was a long time since I had worked on piston engine aircraft, general aviation aircraft. The only thing I had been doing was composite experimental stuff in the time I was going to get my A&P. And so I need a refresher. So I went to the Baker School, which if you ask almost any mechanic, they will swear upon a stack of Bibles or a stack of FARs, and they will recommend the Baker School. One thing I liked about the Baker School, yeah, they guarantee you're going to get your A&P. It is going to take a lot of work, but they have the facilities there to get you ready to take your written test. They also have a really nicely appointed lab where they will take you through all of the practical stuff you have to know to get your certification. Very well equipped. The teachers there, when I was there, they really bent over backwards. They were top notch. And from the sound of things, they still are. But when you go to Baker's, you got to commit to it. And here's a list of things that you just don't want to do when you get to Baker's. You don't want to take sample or random tests before you get there. They have a very well-defined and very successful program to get in the door and help you pass these tests. I mean, there's no cheating, there's nothing like that. FAA is always watching. But you don't take these random tests, you don't take these sample tests you may find online, because it may get in the way of their learning process. And their learning process is extremely valuable. Extremely valuable. Another thing you don't do is you don't slack off before you get to Baker's. You know, you get an FAR manual, you study your FARs, you study procedures, you start practicing safety wiring, and you start studying electricity. Seems like a lot of people, at least when I was there, I was tutoring a lot of people on electricity and resistors and capacitors and what they all do and how radios work and radiated frequencies and all that kind of stuff, RF energy. So you can always brush up on that thing. Just don't take the randomized test, because follow their program. But before you get there, be sure to learn all the underlying stuff of mechanics and what, you know, bolt codes, and you know how a jet engine works. If you've never worked on one of those, always study these things and be prepared when you go there. Be prepared because they want you to be successful, and I want you to be successful, but you got to study, and you can't slack off the day before you get on the airplane to go to Tennessee. The last thing you don't do before you go is think this is going to be easy. It ain't going to be easy. It's not going to be easy at all. This is, I mean, for me, I'm very well educated, and this was very, very hard for me. Now, somebody that's been in the Marines and been working on helicopters straight for the last 15 years, they'll have an easier time than me, because I've got a career gap in aviation. I had to really work harder than most people, but you still, even if you were in the Marines and worked on helicopters the last 15 years, you probably don't know anything about a Lycoming. So you're going to have to study, and don't think, even if you're well learned in aviation mechanics, don't take that as a sign that you can slack off. Don't think it's going to be easy, because it is not. And now I've got a list of things you don't do when you get to Baker's. You do not, under any circumstances, go to Nashville. Nashville is just minutes down the road. There's lots of there's the Grand Ole Opry. There's lots of wonderful restaurants. There's lots of bars that are just amazing, that you will never enjoy until you get your A&P certification. Once you get that done, then go to Nashville. Celebrate with all your friends. But until that, you got that piece of paper in your hand, you are not going. You're going to study. And you're not going to take the weekends off. Now, when I went, classes were Monday through Saturday. We had half days on Saturday. And you studied on weekends. You got Sundays off. You still don't go to Nashville. You stay in your hotel, get together with some of your classmates, and you study. You study, study, study. And then after classes, once you've eaten a good proper meal, then you study some more. You're never going to go to Nashville because you're going to study. You're never going to take weekends off because you're going to study. After classes, during the weekdays, you're going to study. You're going to study, study, study. And that's how you're going to be successful. And that's how the Baker School makes sure you're successful. One thing that the Baker School was starting to push hard is study groups. So after you get into your oral and practical portion of your studying at a Baker School, you get your ass in a study group every single night. You get a bunch of your friends or acquaintances or the people sitting in the same class as you. You get together and you study. You ask each other questions. They ask you questions. You go through their study guide that's provided by Baker's, and you do this every single night. Just the act of asking people questions and having them, your peers, your other fellow students, asking you questions is going to better prepare you for your oral and practical. And for me, the oral and practical was the most difficult, because for me, that was when I was the most stressed. For me, that was when I was the most mentally exhausted. It was rough for me. I mean, I'm not too proud to admit that this was really hard, and it was so worth it. Absolutely so worth it. I mean, looking back, more than 2 years ago, doing this, got my own airplane now, servicing my own, getting ready to take my IA. It's given me a lot of financial freedom that I didn't really have otherwise. That certification means a lot. Yeah, you're starting out, you're not going to be making bank, but you'll always have something to fall back on. At my age, having something to fall back on is pretty nice. Let me talk some more about money. The money you spend on the tuition is going to be the smaller of your bills. The airline travel, the food cost, the hotel, rental car, all of that to support yourself for 2 weeks in Tennessee is going to cost money. And even if you take a week longer, let's say you really have trouble with the written exams and flunk them a few times. Let's say you really have problems with the oral exams and flunk them a few times, or you have problems with the practical and you have to repeat them, and you're there for 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. Whatever you are spending to get your certification at the Baker School is going to be way less than a semester at college. Let me just say that again. The cost of getting your A&P through the Baker School, including all your hotels, all of your dining, all of the bills that you have to shell out, is still going to be cheaper than a semester of college. Now, there's a lot of ways you can lower that cost, but even with worst case scenario, it's still going to be cheaper than a semester of college. There's lots of hotels and motels in the area. The Baker School has a deal with all of these. Just call them; they'll make the reservations for you, and that's one way to cut your cost. Another way to cut your cost is Walmart. Love your Walmart. My God, people, love your Walmart. Walmart will save you a lot of money on food, especially on your food bill. You cut drastically. Make you a sandwich. Throw it in your backpack. Go to the Walmart. It's close by. Get lunch and meat, get cereal, get some milk, put it in the refrigerator in your room, and just make your own meals. That will save you a ton of bread. See what I did there? Bread, little pun. Just see it. It was but it will save you a lot of money. So love your Walmart. Another way to save money is to visit an aviation museum and spend all day. If you're fortunate enough to live near an aviation museum, and I had the good fortune of actually having an office inside the Evergreen Aviation Space Museum in Oregon, home of the Spruce Goose, it was very beneficial for me. I mean, I looked and examined at all the ways aircraft were built, airplanes I'd never worked on, I became very familiar with. I took a lot of reference photos so I could identify what certain gizmos on a radial engine. I could figure out what the gizmos were on a jet engine. I take the photo, go back and say, okay, this must be this because this is connected to this, and this other thing has got this other gizmo, which means it must do that. And so visit a museum, take a lot of photos. So take advantage of your local aviation. The bees are everywhere. I am not pollinating. I did trim my beard. As I mentioned before, one of the rougher things that I helped other students with when I was at the Baker School is electronics. Unless you've got an electronics degree or you have got a long time experience, and I'm just not talking avionics. I am talking Ohm's law and some really basic things dealing with electricity and electronics. There's a lot of things you can do to prepare yourself. There's a lot of YouTube videos that explains about electronics, but they don't go that far. I mean, they kind of explain it to you, and you can kind of get what Ohm's law is, right? But the doing of it and seeing how changing this actually changes that, you don't get out of a video. So what I would suggest, and these are linked in the description below, is something like this. An electronic project kit. They do 100 projects, they do 150. Get one of those, and go through each little experiment, see what they do, each one experiment does, see whether the resistor modifies a circuit, see what changing the capacitors do in a circuit, go through them and learn what all these things do. And it will save you a buttload of time. It'll reduce your stress during class and during your written test and during your oral and during your practical. You'll have this down pat. And for something something as simple as an electronic project kit, take advantage of it. Trust me. The thing that helped me the most through this entire ordeal, and it's an ordeal, was flashcards, especially on the oral exam. I would take the questions that was in the prep book. I would write the question out on one side, and the back of the card I wrote my answer in my own words. Now, as you're going through these flashcards, you do one for every single question on every section of the test, and you end up with a stack of flashcards. And you take those things everywhere you go. You take them to dinner with your friends. You take them to the study group. You read through them while you're sitting in the John, man. I mean, these things are going to become very, very important because they're going to save your butt. Because that's the way you're going to learn. Writing them out, the question, and writing out the answers helps build the memory muscle in your brain. Just hearing it and saying it, that's a different thing, but actually taking the time to write it with your hand, not typing it, write it out, really nails this stuff in. It really does. There's often comes up a question of tech schools versus the benefits of tech schools. How much do tech schools cost? Is the value that's in a tech school, how many years are going to take you to pay off the loans or whatever? What I would do instead, this is just me, this is how I did it. I didn't go to tech school. I got a job at an airport under an IA. You know, I worked for more than 3 years, and I had letters from the IA stipulating, yes, he did this, he did that, he did the other, and I used that documentation, kind of a apprenticeship, to go take my test. So all that time I wasn't making a lot of money. You know, I was barely hovering above minimum wage, but I was bringing money in. And I don't have to go take a second job to pay for my schooling. My schooling is built in. I'm already getting paid for the job. I'm learning on the job, you know, and I'm seeing not just the practice of wrenching on an airplane. I'm seeing all the other things that's going on at an airport and in aviation, and I have a better understanding of it than I would in a classroom setting. So instead of going out and blowing through tens of thousands of dollars in cash to go to a trade school to get your A&P, go to work and get your A&P. I mean, find some guy that just needs somebody to come in, and you can't go in and destroy his airplanes. You got to actually, you know, listen to him or her and listen well, and then come out and, you know, after the specified time, go take your test. That, from a financial point of view, that's a lot smarter thing to do. You come out better educated, you're not in debt, and, you know, frankly, you've got more money for tools, man. Yeah! Okay, you're probably getting tools all along the way, and I got another video just for tools. So my suggestion would be to go get a job in aviation, work for a mechanic, get him to write your letter, go to Baker School, get your A&P. The last piece of advice, the very last words of wisdom I have for you: don't quit. Don't quit. It's so easy to quit. I mean, you may totally blow a written exam, man. You may get through the general, you may get through the power plant, and you may absolutely face plant on the airframe. Don't think of failure, of not passing. Don't think of not passing a test the end of your aviation career. Go back to your study group. Go back to your flashcards. Study, 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 study. You will get through it. It's not easy. It's awful damn difficult, but you will get through it. Don't give up. Don't quit. You know, if you blow an oral exam, flashcards, study group, study, 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 study. If you've got a problem in the practical exam, hit the lab. Safety wire, safety wire, safety wire. Do the mag lessons over and over and over and over. Rivet your brains out. You know? Do anything you can to make sure you're successful. But do not quit. Like, they guarantee you're going to pass. But you got to do your part. It's, you know, your A&P is not going to be something that's handed to you on a platter or comes in a Happy Meal. You got to work for it. But it's worth it. And once you get there, you can't stop until you get your certificate. You know, the examiner will say, congratulations, you're now an A&P, you now have a certificate to learn. Side note, you're getting a certificate, not a license. Most A&Ps are kind of persnickety on this. Learn it. Certificate. You're not getting a license. And that's it here from Mentor Field in sunny Shafter, California. If you like this video, please, love of God, give it a thumbs up. That's all I'm asking. If you like what I'm doing on the channel, please subscribe. If you got any questions or comments, just drop those in the comments below. And until next time, fly safe and study. Study, 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 study. You need to study. Don't give me the lip about it. You're going to study. And one last thing, one last thing. Wear your safety glasses. Wear your safety glasses. Don't work on an airplane, don't work on a lawnmower, don't work on your truck unless you're wearing your safety glasses. Wear your safety glasses. Don't be such a snowflake. Wear your safety glasses. And I'm pointing to you, and you know who I'm pointing at. Wear your safety glasses.